Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here. It's great to see you. All of our beautiful known faces, all of our beautiful new faces. Great to see you. Hi, Samra. I'm Theresa Reid. I'm the chair of the Washtenaw County Democratic Party. We are super, super happy to have you here. Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. Okay, first I start with the land acknowledgement. Washtenaw County occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi. The Washtenaw County Democratic Party recognizes historic indigenous communities in Michigan and those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. Washtenaw County occupies land ceded in the 1807 Treaty of Detroit. We further recognize the ongoing relationship of dependence upon and respect for all living beings of earth, sky, and water. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty, history, and experiences. Indeed, Joanne. All right. First of all, if you're new, would you stand up? If you have, if this is your first meeting or second meeting, stand up. Yay! Wow! Seriously, fantastic! It's so good to see you here. All of you people who are old timers, not old timers, who've been here before, find a new face and welcome them, okay? Because when I first started coming to these meetings, honestly, it felt a little not as welcoming as it should. And especially at a time like this, Janet Cannon was the first person who called me by name at one of these meetings, and it was so nice. And I said, oh, somebody did notice that I'm here. Thank you. So say hi to new people. It's really, really important. Well, we're very happy that you're here. We need everybody, obviously, at this horrific time in our nation's history. I want to notice that we have a Milan City Council member. You want to stand up, Josh, real quick? Yay! Thank you for being here. We don't see a lot of people from Milan, and right there on the bottom of the sixth of the county. So it's great to have you. Thank you for coming. Yay. Okay, so other electeds. Who else is here? Every elected. Susan Basket, Ann Arbor School Board. Ellie Savit, County Prosecutor. Jason Morgan, State Rep. Anybody else? How about all of you PDs? PDs wave. Precinct delegates are super important to the work. Fantastic. All right. And everybody on Zoom, where's the camera? I'm saying hi. I hope I'm looking at the camera. Everybody on Zoom, hello, including Jessica Fogel. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you. Well, to be seen anyway. I want to thank the program committee. Eli Nathans, Ellie Savit, it's Ellie Savit, is how you pronounce Ellie. And then we have Eli Nathans, and I'm always mixing it up. But anyway, Eli Nathans and Annie Somerville, thank you for doing all of this work for the meetings. Really, really valuable planning and all the food, and Rayanne Weymouth brings food. Thank you very much. I'm thinking, Jim Russo, standing up right now, is our technical wizard on site. And Tom Knox is our technical wizard on Zoom. Thank you, Tom, and our comms co-chair along with Erica. So all good. Executive board members, you want to stand up and just wave too? We have several. Mary, Erica, who else? These are hardworking people. Vince, very hardworking people. So we're super glad that you're here. Okay, we're all in it together. We expect Debbie Dingell. Do we have Debbie? Is Debbie coming, or do we know if Debbie's coming, Eli, or is she coming on? Okay. I want to talk with you all about some new work that we're doing. And Janet Cannon will come up and help me out with this, because Janet's chair of precinct organizing. Janet, where'd you go? Okay, why don't you come up and talk about this a little bit? Janet's the chair of the precinct organizing committee. And we have, as many of you know, we have 15 areas in the county and that we organize for precinct organizing. the precinct organizing team a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, maybe 4 years, 2 cycles ago, or, divided us up into 15 areas and recruited area captains to help with precinct organizing, mostly around election times. So, hey, Josh, glad you're here too. So mostly around election times. And I need some more water. Hang on a second. And then we also have 15 areas for the county committee. Okay, so the same areas for the precinct organizing with area captains are also now areas with for the county committee. So we have county committee members and area captains and precinct delegates in those areas. In previous cycles, we've mostly just kind of started up that machine towards the election, like September, right? We need to get the voter guide out. We need to get flyers out. We need to get the votes out. This cycle, we're wanting to start that a lot earlier because we have so much to do and so many people who want to do it. So, you guys?
Okay, good morning. Let me first introduce our new co-chair of precinct organizing, Joshua McAllister. Yeah. And so we were asking our question, how can the precinct organizing committee serve to mobilize volunteers to get a clear message to voters? Because what we've been hearing consistently is that public pushback is building. It's beginning to be effective. People outside of those who are already pushing back are not well informed and need to know how they can mobilize when they get to the point where they see how urgent it is, right? So we thought about, boy, what are we going to do? And on the one hand, we've had several meetings with our precinct delegates who are like our strong core of committed volunteers. And the feeling that we're getting is that on the one hand, creating small local groups is one really good way to mobilize. Congresswoman Dingell is here. Are you on a tight schedule, or shall we do this part first? Up to you. 5 minutes? Yeah. Let's. Yeah. Okay.
Come on up, Debbie. Debbie always has more to do than basically anybody else on the planet. So come, please. But she always makes it.
Good morning. I come from Dexter Forum to here. And unfortunately I have to go to a funeral and I have to take my mother because it's her best friend. So I'm lucky to have my mother still alive. And anyway, I just had this discussion at Dexter Forum. How do I talk about what's happening right now in Washington? And I'm really going to lay it out. At the beginning, everybody was tiptoeing and how do we do it? The American people spoke. And I've said I was willing to stand up to him when it was going to hurt the people of the 6th district and the people of Michigan. And when we could get something done, we would work together. And I still will work with Republicans. And your head was kind of spinning the first week, the second week. But we really need to take stock of where we are and what is happening. And we cannot be quiet. And we got to do, but we got to be effective. That's right. Yeah. So let me give you sort of where we are. First of all, when you talk about the state of Michigan, 43% of the budget comes from the federal government. And as Jason can tell you, and I know Jennifer is following me over here from Dexter Forum, the governor has made it very clear there is no money to replace the federal dollars coming to the state of Michigan. There's so many things to talk about. I want to talk about what's really happening at the agencies and the impact on us. And then we could also talk about what happened in the White House yesterday and the absolute, the one thing, I wasn't going to do this, and here I am doing it up first. The one thing that Donald Trump said in the Oval Office that had any truth or credibility to it is we're inching closer to World War III. But not because of President Zelensky, because of President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And we need to be scared about that. And I got to figure out, how do we take that on? It happened yesterday. I've been home. I want to get back to Washington, but we need to get some United States, quite frankly, Republican senators to get some balls, who, when they were in Germany just a week ago, told them how important he was and about the world order. And then Lindsey Graham goes the other way and says he's out of place. He was not out of place, standing up for Ukraine and saying that Russia invaded it, period. Russia was the invader. And we need to start reminding that. When I walked into Dexter Forum today, somebody else told me this. Those people that are checking in say we need to start learning Russian. I am not going to let Putin take over the United States of America. China's not taking over the United States of America. We are America. We are strong and will stay independent. But this one's really a mess. And then we could talk about how Elon Musk has gone into every agency and has your social security number, your residence, your history of employment, a whole lot of, I do think there's a generational divide. Young people don't care that they know so much about you. They don't care that they've got your tax returns. They don't care that they know when you had your colonoscopy. Young people probably aren't having colonoscopies. But this data is being weaponized. It's being businessized. It's going to be used for AI. And, the problem is, once he's got it, you don't put the genie back in the bottle. So we're fighting that. And I'll get to the end of this and talk about how some of the things that we've got to do. But I really want to talk about what's happened in the last couple of weeks. February 14th, I was in both veterans hospitals. And I always go. I'm a regular at the veterans hospitals. And the first layoffs that impacted, I think, this community were the February 13th, where there have been layoffs. And they're not layoffs. I'm an auto girl. I use the word layoffs. They were fired. The John Dingell had firing. The VA here, the Ann Arbor VA, was hurt more in that first round of firing. A researcher who's doing research on burn pits, and there's research going on there on mental health, etc. And, the people, morale is so, I was with many of the employees yesterday. Morale is low. Nobody knows what's coming next. Nobody knows if their job's safe. But this week they got hit with 70 more cuts between the two hospitals. And, for the John Dingell, we're a little luckier in Ann Arbor because of the affiliation with the University of Michigan. I get a lot of good intelligence from doctors and nurses at Michigan who are in joint partnerships with the Ann Arbor VA. And they do have Michigan. I got to be careful to protect everybody. People are very worried about what's happening at the Ann Arbor VA and the people that were let go. And by the way, you say nothing's going to be hurt in veterans care. People who keep are the boiler people that keep the hospital warm, people that clean the rooms, people that serve the food and prepare it and keep it safe are important too, as the doctors and nurses. And they've got to be there to keep that hospital operating. And so some of those people are on the not critical list, but there were also administrators that really matter. And they're going to a new electronic medical system at both hospitals that isn't being staffed. And because of what's happening now, people are getting sick and there are accidents and some people have died. So that's a problem. And we got to ask questions about, and, as much as I've talked to many people at both hospitals, morale is low there. They care about the veterans. They care about the patient safety. They care about the wait lines. And that's what we've got to, immediately wrote a letter on February 14th when they did the next round of 70 layoffs. I did another letter. And then yesterday with AFGE, we had a very, very good rally down at the John Dingell VA with Ann Arbor and Detroit hospitals. And quite frankly, it got a lot of press, which is what we've got to lift the stories. And it's not our faces. It's the faces of the veterans, the workers. He's been willing to talk publicly, and he's going to be in Washington for the State of the Union on Tuesday. But you've got 10-year veterans or 10-year people who've worked at the VA 10 years, were promoted, were in a new job, hadn't been in the new job for a year, so they were probationary employees and fired. That would never, they're not a probationary employee. They've been at the VA for 11 years. That's just plain morally wrong. This week's been really hard. Multiple people have been fired, and I'm going to expand this now, that had outstanding appraisals in December and were fired for cause, but have no paperwork. It's just, so the VA is where we first saw it, but there are, if you just want to talk Washtenaw County, the EPA lab, dozens of people have been laid off in Region 5. And it's a lot of things we care about. If you put global climate change off to here, let's just talk about the dioxin and plume, in brownfield and the Superfund sites downriver, getting lead out of every pipe in America. Oh, and while we're talking about that, the bipartisan infrastructure law had money to get the lead out of every pipe in America so no child is ever poisoned again. He's put that on hold. No funding going out for that. But this county and across the country, making sure that everybody has access to broadband and internet. That money was in that bill. Money was coming to get everybody having access to internet. That is on hold. But this week you got the EPA lab. I am trying to keep up with stuff as much as I can. Thursday night, they laid off, I'm not quite sure of the number, probably approximately 20 people at the Great Lakes lab here in Ann Arbor. Yesterday, when I was down at the VA, a couple of those employees came down. One woman who's probably been at some of these meetings just collapsed, literally collapsed in my arms, sobbing. She didn't expect it. She didn't. And I again did a letter with Marcy Capter, we're the co-chairs of the Great Lakes region, saying, okay, what work are they doing? What's going to be impacted? What's not going to happen in the Great Lakes because of what they're doing? And we got to get the facts and then raise that up and let people know what it's about. HUD is cutting 50% of its staff. That's going to impact, they're going to close HUD offices here. They're closing 1,000 Social Security offices. 2,500 people are being fired. Now, don't tell me you're not going to touch Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid when you are closing 1,000 offices and firing 2,500 people. Who is going to help the senior when they need help because they didn't get a check or they've got to get an answer to a question? Nobody, because there's not going to be anybody there. And then let's talk about Medicaid. So we're trying to hold them accountable on Medicaid. I don't know if you heard what happened this week. Tuesday, they passed a budget, one vote. And they played games. We were voting. They held open a vote for an hour, then said no more votes tonight. After everybody had left, 10 minutes later, they called everybody back with sincere hopes that not every Democrat would get back. I'm not, who knows? Yeah, I'll put money on it. And we all did get back, and they won it by one vote. So this week, as we're going into it, the nitty gritty is going to start. And they keep saying, no, we're not going to cut Medicaid. We're not going to cut Medicaid. Well, they have, and so the budget expires March 14th. I don't know what's going to happen. We're starting the nitty gritty work. My committee, Energy and Commerce, has Medicaid. Their draft plan says they've got to cut $880 billion from Medicaid. Okay, I want you all to really, and we got to tell people what, although the polls show more people realize what Medicaid is than most people realize. The children it's paying for, the longest payer of long-term care. And what is absolutely awful about what Donald Trump is doing is the genocide he wants to do to the disabled. He has no respect, doesn't want to help them, wants to cut every penny that's helping them. And people with disabilities are just have every right to access to everything that we do. They're contributing human beings that have great dignity and value, and they deserve our respect, not the insults this man is giving to the disability community every time he turns around. It's just wrong. And we gotta, well, it is. So in committee this week, somebody got, because we're trying to hold them accountable. The same day we did the budget. We had a committee markup from 10 a.m. to midnight. And sorry, get your RSV vaccinations next year. We kept trying to show them what would happen if Medicaid got cut. So the next day we're in committee, and one of my colleagues, Republican, says, when John Dingell was chair of this committee, he said the Globe was the jurisdiction. You all keep trying to say we're going to cut Medicaid, but we haven't cut it. We've got a Globe to cut it from. So Diana Dingell, who I was sitting next to, said, okay, ask him where it's coming from. So I did. I said, okay, if you're not going to cut Medicaid, what are you going to cut? Give us the facts. Tell us what you're going to do. Tell us how you're going to reach that budget. But, in the meantime, and to give you a little more of what TSA workers were let go yesterday, we don't have enough air traffic controllers. That's what I was going to say. So, we don't have enough. And Elon Musk, my President Musk, as I call him, it says Verizon's not competent. He wants to give the contract. The man that's canceling contracts all over the place, except for the ones he has, wants SpaceX to take over. I don't trust Elon Musk taking over any airport in America, though we are less safe. I want you to look at the number of accidents, airplane accidents, and near misses that we have had in the last 3 weeks. We're less safe because we have bird flu across the country, here in Washtenaw County and in Michigan, and they fired the people that are tracking that. This week, we have the University of Michigan. Has anybody, I went to my asthma doctor yesterday. I told him it took me a half hour to get upstairs. 25 people stopped me to talk about a whole range of things. The doctors whose research wasn't being done, the nurse whose sister had been fired the day before. And I said, where did she work? She said, I don't know. She couldn't stop crying. She wasn't ready for it. The mother who had a child in the wheelchair and said, how am I going to take care of my child if they take this money away, and started crying while I was right there? This is like, these are real people that are being impacted by this. And we have got to tell the story. We have to tell the stories and what they're doing every day. And this doesn't get into immigration, which I'm being very careful about. I don't want to put a target on anybody's back. We're working to make sure everybody knows their rights and are doing it correctly. And the people that have, the Jewish Family Services, which has 226 people that they're relocating from Afghanistan because they work to keep American military men and women safe from people who wanted to kill them. And now people want to kill them. So we're relocating them to keep them safe. Contract just stopped. God bless the JFS board, who says we have a moral obligation to take care of these people, and they're trying to fundraise for that. Look what happened to USAID. We have farmers that are being impacted by it now, but we're beginning to see the outbreak of disease. This is the story I started to tell you before I went off to, I have too many stories. The NIH has, so they're backdooring because they've been told to restore some of the funds. The NIH advisory committee that determines what will be in the flu vaccine in the fall, they are not publishing in the Federal Register when the advisory committee meetings are meeting. So the flu advisory committee that needs to determine now so the flu vaccines can be made was not allowed to meet this week. So, okay, I've given you enough. But what I'm saying to you all, we have to fight back. And the way we have to do it is smart and effective. There are 5 prongs: litigation, and I know a lot, we're winning. Here is a reality in the courts. We have not lost a case. We have not had some move forward because the judge has found that the party does not have standing. So we are working very hard. We've got a litigation task force. We're working with outside groups to challenge everything. And Dana Nessel, look, guys, I want to say something off record as I'm talking about this. We need to win back in 2 years. And circular firing squads are not going to help us win back, period. They're not. Yesterday I had a reporter says, Governor Whitmer doing enough? I said, you know what? That's a gotcha question. And we don't need circular firing squads. If we're going to win back, we got to be united in remembering where our anger needs to be directed. And that is at President Trump and President Musk, period. Well, that's where I'm going next. That's why I was about what you need to be doing. I do want to know, and I am asking everybody to tell me when they know the impact of another cut or because I am keeping running lists, and I'm going to have the lists on my site of how many people in the 6th district are, have Medicaid, all that. That'll be there. But we have to, one, lift the human stories. And then we have Republicans in this state that we need to be, I'm going to ask you not to run out and say Debbie Dingell said to go do this. The Republicans in this, what is the closest thing that we can do is to make sure that they are hearing from people in this state. They need to see the human stories. They need to see how people are being impacted. They need to see the veteran whose health care is being impacted, the child that can't get health care, the community center that may not exist. Food bank, I got to be careful because we don't want targets on anybody's back. So I won't name a specific one, but all the food banks have been cut by USDA. By 14%. So the food that people need to get. So people are going to be hungry. SNAP. What does SNAP do? We got to protect SNAP. We want hungry children in this country. We got to take every single story. We got to put the human face on it. We got to put it out there. We got to make sure it's in the media. We got to make sure it's on social media. We got to make sure it's on podcasts. We need to make sure it's in every one of those damn conservative, wherever they're communicating. And we have to be the voices that are smart, targeted, and effective in fighting back. And the way we do that, we litigate, we legislate. We only need 3 votes, 3 Republican votes. I don't know that we can ever get the person that's closest to us, but he is chair of Ed and Labor. But we need to be targeting someone that may want to run for governor. I'm not going to give you names, so I can't get in total trouble, but take your brain one little bit. We need to be targeting all that. Then we need to be educating. That's raising the stories. That's telling people what is happening. We've got to be advocating, and we got to be communicating. So that's the 5-pronged strategy: litigate, legislate, educate, advocate, communicate. So I wish I could be more cheerful, but there's a lot of work, and we got to keep that energy up. I could do a couple. I'll do a couple. I'll speed to Bloomfield Hills. Diane. I hope nobody taped that.
Can you hear me?
Representative Dingell, is there an opportunity for faith on, off?
Just
He has a mask
closer
on
to
too.
your.
Okay, let's try that. Yeah, I hear it now. Okay. Representative Dingell, is there an opportunity for groups like, I've recently heard about the 33 for Free and the Unitarian Universalists who are trying to contact legislators. Are there an opportunity for faith groups to unite? And is there a party team that can help us focus in terms of which districts we should look at?
Yes. I mean, yeah, faith groups coming together is very important, and probably in some of these other districts will really make a difference. I'm just going to give you a blanket statement right now, and then you can, Jason's here. And by the way, I should have said this. Yesterday, all the state legislators and I were together. We're going to do a town hall together Thursday night. We just put this together. The flyers will go out today. Thursday night, March 6th at Washtenaw Community College at 7 o'clock. Prior to that, from 5:30 to 6:30, I'm going to do a teletown hall. So it's another opportunity to be safe. But just right now, in any Republican, any family member you know that's got a Republican in another state, but every Michigan Republican should be targeted.
I'll let the representative pick the
I'm
next
going to let
person.
the chair do it.
Okay. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, very quickly, your 5-part list of what we can do, it doesn't apply to what just happened in Ukraine. One of the most terrible events in the history of our country, to abandon them as they're fighting on the battlefield against Putin. What can we do?
Those 3 words: educate, advocate, communicate. Tell people how outraged you are. Tell people what it's doing to the danger of our national security. Tell people, remind people about who Putin is. Those 3 words still on any of this. The Ukraine community is a loud community. It needs to come together. Donate to Ukraine. Donate to Ukraine. But we need to make our voices loud and clear. And guys, I do want to know when people are impacted, but you don't. And they started a thing. We answer our phones. We do answer our phones, but my office is not where the energy needs to go. You got me. But you always can call me.
Good morning, Congresswoman Dingell. You know, I was just talking to my brother. He lives in Alabama, and I actually belong to the Alabama Black Caucus too. They had a meeting this morning, and one of the Republican senators actually showed up because they just found out that NOAA has been partially shut down. They will not know when hurricanes are coming. So you
That's
might
fine.
actually have some allies, because now, and all of a sudden, so they're in their meeting and they get a call from Kay, who's their governor, saying, how long is your meeting going? Because now they're all upset because the pilots from NOAA, the 3 pilots they have now, they only have 1. The guys who actually operate the submarines for NOAA, they have been put on leave. So now the southern states are being faced with the fact that they will not even know when bad weather's coming, because now I guess we're going to have to look at the European model. They don't have a backup. So my brother was in, before I came here, they have very early meetings. They meet at like 6 a.m. And he just thought, and he called me and he said, guess who just showed up at our meeting? He goes, guess who just called our chair? And their party, and saying, hey, we all need to talk, because they realize that this is going to affect the whole state of Alabama.
It's going to affect the country. Yeah. One of the things that I was told last night, and I'm trying to get actual data, is the computer, the supercomputer that tracks everything. The building it's in was shut down by GSA yesterday, and everybody was told to move. So we're trying to get that data to make that public too.
Kind of going on with what she was just saying, and earlier in the meeting, are there Republican representatives and senators who actually are reaching out and trying to grow some, for lack of a better word? Because I saw there were a bunch of town hall meetings last week that I saw online on YouTube, and their constituents were extremely upset with them, and to be honest, they looked confused why their Republican supporters who voted for them were mad at their policy.
Republicans need to know their constituents are mad at them. Republicans have told their members to stop holding town hall meetings or do teletown halls. But people, be a pain in the ass. Okay, please don't quote me. But people need to hear those voices. They need to hear that people are angry. So don't stop. Target. Make those voices heard.
We have 10 minutes till the panel starts, and we have some other business we have to get done. I'll take James. One more, last one.
Yes, good morning. What do we do when he has all the cards? And what do we do then when he declared martial law? And
We're gonna stand up, not,
and he cancels all these type of meetings like this meeting this morning and the town halls and in any gatherings.
I mean, what we're talking about, what we do. I mean, we don't have the votes for impeachment right now. Yeah, we do right now. We couldn't get him impeached 4 years ago, but no, it's not yet. That's why people have to make their voices heard. You got to really target. But what I want to say to you is, don't think people aren't thinking about it.
Uh,
Okay, thank you guys. Love you.
Thank you, Debbie.
sorry.
I want to just say how
call
thankful I am. What?
You pointed to somebody.
No,
just
I'm telling Ellie Savit to
Oh.
come up. But he's ignoring me, so whatever. But nothing new. I want to see how thankful I am, and we should all be, to have Debbie as our congresswoman. She never stops. She is amazing. And I will tell you, and Debbie told a story about this at another event we were at. Debbie was our only federal representative who voted against the Lake and Riley Act. Our 2 senators voted for that act, a shameful vote that puts many, many legal fine people in danger, including abused women. It was a shameful vote. So actually, I'm going to be looking for ways that we can affect our senators going forward. I mean, Gary Peters, I'm sorry, he is a lame duck. Stand up. And Alyssa doesn't have to stand for an election again for 6 years. I mean, stand up, educate, stand up. So I'm saying that. I'm glad that Debbie went first. I mean, she always should. Ellie, you can go ahead and sit down because. Oh, yeah. No, I mean here. Sit down here. So I want to say a few things. One, you know, I know we are all feeling extreme urgency around organizing. We have got to get organized. And it's like, I feel like I'm in a swarm of bees, you know, after somebody kicked the nest. It's just like, do this, do this, do this, do this. Tomorrow we're having a potluck, a community potluck for the Joanna, could you guys head outside if you want to talk? Thanks very much. I appreciate that. We're having a community potluck at IBEW Hall, IBEW and UA 190 Hall. Ryan Hussey, our co-chair of fundraising, chair of CD6, and business manager for 252. Thank you, Tracy. Is one of our hosts. We have 13 community co-sponsors for this event. Michigan Resistance, where'd she go? Ginger go. There's Ginger. A2D2, Ann Arbor Indivisible, UAW, UA 190. I'm sorry, not UAW, IBEW, UA 190, the Huron Valley Area Labor Federation, and others. We're very, very proud to have them. The main reason to have this potluck is to bring us together for comfort and for strength. Hey, Shihab. And for comfort and strength, and also to introduce, to start to organize, to start to figure out how do we work together. There is no room anymore for any turf wars or any kind of, well, this is what we do and you do that and get out of my backyard. We are working all together. All of us 13 co-sponsors, we are promoting each other's work. We are supporting each other's work. So this is absolutely key. So come to the potluck, 5 o'clock on our website, washtenaw.dems.org. For all you new folks, please sign up for it. Okay, washtenaw.dems.org. There's a registration link. I'm talking fast and not breathing enough. I'm sorry. So sign up. And also in terms of communication, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, do that. Okay, it goes out once a week. And then we also have a fantastic set of social media. on basically everything. Erica's a new co-chair of communications, and she's really freed up Tom Knox, hi Tom, to move on the socials. But you know, we need you on the socials too. The newsletter's just once a week. As you know, socials go out several times a day. So that's where we're going to organize, and we will be, you know, we will be collaborating with our partners to make sure that we know what's going on, okay, and where to show up. I will say, one of our partners, Ann Arbor Indivisible, held a protest at Tesla yesterday. 300 people showed up. Yay! Including a number of people in this room. So, and on the board and probably on Zoom. So yay, that's fantastic. I think that's all I've got right now. Okay, tomorrow, and if you can come early and help set up to IBEW Hall 7920 Jackson Road, it would be wonderful to have your help, say around 3. And then we need tear down too. Okay, so, and I just want to say one thing. Felicia Braybeck, our wonderful, wonderful former state legislator and psychologist, is going to come tomorrow and give us training in self-care for activists and volunteers, something we all desperately need. So a quick question. Thanks. All right, you know where it is. All right. Yep, Tesla out on Jackson Road, not too far from IBEW. Okay, I'm going to give the mic to you guys for a couple minutes.
Okay, well, Debbie told us why we need to do it, and she gave us the outlines, and we are working on an actual plan. So to be able to be effective, we just need to be together. So one thing is, we at organizing committee would like to help people create small local groups. We have lists of active volunteers, we have lists of voters. We can help you outreach to create groups that can get together and do the calling together, that can send postcards, that can sit together and go through their email contacts and get the messages out. We're looking for people to help us create really effective messages, because there's so many things. You don't want to overwhelm people. We have to be able to choose the thing which is right now that really we need to have people be aware of, and frame it in a way that makes people say, oh yeah, that's me, I'm on board, that affects me, that matters. Okay, we are looking for a few more volunteers to help with that. I think Erica said she would be interested in, we'll talk about it. Yeah. And the other things we are looking for, it would be really great to have what we used to have, a legislative action committee. So a small number of people who are really combing the notices, keeping track of the protests, seeing what the big legislative things to be calling about are. Just a few people to get together to really pull that together and create a web page. Well, we can easily use our website. And then as we create the materials for people to use in the parties as they get together. And also we said, why don't we use our thing that we have built? Our biggest skill is getting out the voter guide. So can we mobilize people who like to walk when we get around April? Take the flyers around, and the flyers will have the link to that webpage with the action and the message and mobilizing information. So that's basically it. Yeah.
Thank you. The amount of work that's done by members of this board and the core team is just staggering. So I just want to say thank you. And I want everybody to recognize what an incredible amount of work is going on. All right. I am happy to introduce our county prosecutor, Ellie Savit.
All right. Well, so a few weeks ago, they asked me to speak at this meeting. They said, we'd like you to speak about Trump's executive orders. And I said, well, how much time do I get? And they said, well, half an hour. And I said, well, we're going to have to narrow that down. So I'm going to talk about Trump's efforts, which you just heard about from Debbie Dingell, to gut federal civil service and his efforts to politicize law enforcement. And I got to say, you heard a lot about this from Representative Dingell, because just in the past week, we've really seen this pick up. I want to start actually by providing, I used to be actually a 8th grade history teacher. I want to provide a little bit of a historical, yes, a little bit of a historical context for why civil service is so important. Back in the 1800s, starting with Andrew Jackson, who, like, I know he was a Democrat, but like we don't like him that much anymore. Federal government jobs were largely given to people who were loyal allies to the president. And by the way, who had basically bought their way into the president's favor. It's called a spoilage system. By the way, does that sound familiar with what Elon Musk did in this past election? And then in the 1880s, this disgruntled guy that actually went to Ann Arbor High School named Charles Guiteau shot President Garfield and killed him. And he was mad because he didn't get some appointment by President Garfield. And it triggered this reform, including the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, which said that civil servants in government have protections across presidential administrations so they can do the work of the government without having to worry about bribing the president, without having to worry about being a loyalist to the president. And that is what we've had since the 1880s in this country, protecting federal workers, allowing us to do things like, track hurricanes, or provide services for veterans, or provide food to folks who need it. And that's exactly what Trump is trying to take away with his efforts to gut civil service protections. Because what he knows is during his first term in office, he wasn't able to get as much done as he wanted to. He wasn't able to build the ideological allegiance to President Trump that he wanted. And so if you read Project 2025, they are doing exactly what they said in Project 2025. First step, get rid of career civil servants who work for the country rather than work for the president. This is geared towards building a federal government that serves Trump and not the American people, and it is extraordinarily dangerous. Well, you guys are all here, and you guys already know that, presumably, that everything that's going on is dangerous. So I want to talk a little bit about the legal challenges that have been brought to some of these actions in court and where things stand. We just saw on Thursday, a federal judge in California issued what I'll call a sort of a ruling in a case brought by labor unions challenging this mass firing of probationary employees. And as Representative Dingell mentioned, when we talk about probationary employees in the federal government, we are talking about people who are not on probation because they did anything wrong. They are recent hires or they recently transferred into their position and don't yet have the civil service protections that federal government workers generally have, meaning they can't just be fired for any, if you have civil service protections, I mean, you can't just be fired for any reason. So the Trump administration has taken the position that they can basically fire every probationary employee that they want, and they did it through this memo that was sent by the Office of Personnel Management, right, to all these federal agencies, which basically said, yeah, you should probably fire all your probationary employees now because Presidents Trump and Musk want you to do it. I'm paraphrasing the memo. It didn't actually say that, but that was the gist. And a federal judge in California on Thursday said there's absolutely no legal authority for the Office of Personnel Management to direct other federal agencies to fire their probationary employees. And he didn't order the firings to stop, right? But what he said is he expects the government will comply with his legal ruling. So we're going to see how that case plays out, but it was a positive glimmer of hope, which indicates that the federal courts are really skeptical of this top-down sort of ability of the government to order a bunch of federal workers who are just, either recently reassigned or recently hired to be fired en masse. So again, it's a glimmer of hope. It's not something that has put a stop to all of this yet, but it's a positive step. And again, that was a case brought by a coalition of labor unions. We've seen other more specific good news on the litigation front in response to Donald Trump and Elon Musk's efforts to entirely dismantle certain federal agencies. And I'll highlight one of them, the Federal Consumer Financial Protection Board. Y'all know what that does? It has brought back $21 billion to American consumers because they were getting scammed by predatory lenders, by malfeasance, by the banks. It is a net positive for the American people. And you want to talk about putting money back in the American people's pockets? It had been doing that, but you know where the money came from? It came from the banks. It came from Elon Musk and Donald Trump's friends. So they don't like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau too much. And they tried to basically decimate it. Told everybody to stop work, told them to start destroying files. They want to absolutely dismantle this vital agency. And that got challenged in court by, there's going to be a theme here, by the way, by the National Treasury's Employees Union. So that union brought the suit, and a federal judge in DC preliminarily ordered all of that to halt, all of what Trump is trying to do to halt. It's called a temporary restraining order, which means don't destroy the files as of now. You can't just lay everybody off as of now. So as of now, those efforts to dismantle the CFPB are put on hold as a result of litigation brought by labor unions in Washington, D.C. Again, that litigation is going to continue, but it's a preliminary glimmer of hope. And then there's other litigation out there that we haven't gotten rulings on yet, but that is challenging, for example, the Trump administration's attempts to reclassify people in the federal government, non-probationary employees we're talking about now, and strip them of their protections. So there's litigation brought again by labor unions there that is challenging that. There hasn't been a ruling in that case yet, but that's going to be a crucial one to watch because if he's able to just reclassify people and deprive them of their civil service protection, it gives them broad sweep to reshape the federal government in the way that they want to. I want to talk about one other case because you'll notice that I mentioned in all these previous cases, these were cases brought by labor unions. And there is one specific firing of one person by the Trump administration that has sought to undermine labor unions in this country and is also being challenged in court. And that was his firing of a woman named Gwen Wilcox, who sat on the National Labor Relations Board. The National Labor Relations Board is the body that adjudicates labor disputes. If you want to have a union recognized, NLRB signs off on it. If there's a labor dispute, the NLRB is supposed to be the one that adjudicates it, and it's supposed to be nationwide for private sector unions, right? We don't have parallels in the state. Now, when Trump fired this board member, that meant that that board doesn't have a quorum right now, which means they cannot act, which means that they are functionally stymied. And that was intentional. And by the way, he fired her, not for any cause, but just because he didn't like her, right? He didn't even make an effort to suggest that he was firing her for cause. She has sued, claiming that her firing was unlawful because you are only supposed to be able to fire a member of the NLRB for cause, for malfeasance in office. And she did not even arguably do anything wrong in office. So she has sued to try to reinstate herself to the National Labor Relations Board. And by the way, thus to reinstate labor law in this country. And that case is up right now. I think it's in Washington, D.C., and I think we expect a ruling soon. This case is going to go up to the U.S. Supreme Court because Trump did this intentionally to set up a challenge before the United States Supreme Court. And what he wants is for the Supreme Court to basically say that he's a king, and that even though Congress passed a law that said you can't fire members of the NLRB except for cause, that he is the executive and he can do whatever he wants, and that law is unconstitutional. That is what this litigation is geared towards. He expected the lawsuit. He expects to litigate it up to the Supreme Court. We'll see how that goes, but that is a particularly important case to watch because you've seen how labor unions are fighting back against these efforts to gut federal employment protections, and they're fighting back across a whole variety of spectrums. But if you dismantle labor law in this country, which is what Trump is trying to do, it undercuts unions and our working class, and it is very, very intentional. So I've talked a lot about court cases. And probably the question that I've gotten most when I've been talking about court cases and saying, like, look, a judge said something good. There's a glimmer of hope, right? We're litigating, we're fighting back. Is what happens when the Trump administration defies a court order. And I've got to be honest with you guys, because I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. We talk about constitutional crises. That's when we're really in a constitutional crisis. If the Trump administration says, not that we're going to appeal this, not that we disagree with the court order, but we'll abide by it, but that we are flat out not going to obey it, that's when we see what we've seen in so many other countries where, frankly, those of us, those parts of government that wield force, the military, the police, the bailiffs in court, they have to choose. Do we go with the president of the United States, who is directly above us in the chain of command? Or is our primary loyalty to the rule of law and to the Constitution? That's a very scary proposition for all of us in 2025. And I have to say, honestly, I don't know how that plays out. I don't have an answer there. What I do know is that some of Trump's actions to politicize law enforcement and the military are really, really dangerous on this front. You saw just last week, he fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, right? Which generally does not happen. These generally serve across presidential administrations, but he wanted to replace the chairman of the Joint Chiefs with somebody who is a Trump loyalist. That's what we see in banana republics. Yes, that is what we see in fascist countries. And it's an attempt to gain loyalty within the military. He's done this in the Department of Justice. Many people may have followed what happened in the DOJ after the president ordered, the president and the attorney general ordered the public integrity section, the public corruption section of the federal government to drop charges against Eric Adams, who, by the way, is comically corrupt, and the charges were well-founded. But they did it pretty expressly for political reasons. They said, we're dropping charges against you so you can help us with immigration enforcement. And you saw a bunch of attorneys in the Department of Justice say, I am not going into court and dropping this case. I will sooner resign. And it was profiled and courage. And I want to clap for them, but I'm also deeply saddened by it. Because when you lose good people of good conscience in the federal government, who is going to replace them? And I don't envy people having to make that choice, right? But I do know that I want people of conscience to stay. But I also understand that if you just can't work there, right? If you can't, according to your own ethics, go into court and say, I'm dropping this case against Eric Adams, I understand why people need to resign. But it again leads us to a very dangerous situation when we're politicizing the DOJ, when we're politicizing the military, when we are politicizing law enforcement. I'll tell you this, law enforcement really is something that should remain constant across presidential administrations, right? We should not have law enforcement or the military or those of us that use force to have primary fealty to the president that is in office at the time. That's the very danger that we have civil service protections to protect against. And I mentioned at the start of this that all of this sort of started with Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was the last US president to defy a US Supreme Court order, and that is not a coincidence. He famously said in a case about native sovereignty that the government ruled against him, or the Supreme Court ruled against him. He said, the Supreme Court has made its decision, now come let them enforce it. And refused to abide by it. We haven't had a crisis like that in this country since Andrew Jackson's time. But I'm very concerned that we are heading in that direction. Again, people are litigating in court. States are litigating, the unions are litigating, individuals are litigating, and we are getting court rulings that say this stuff is unconstitutional, it's unlawful. But at the end of the day, all of this is geared towards building a government that has loyalty not to our Constitution, has loyalty not to the people of the United States, but has primary loyalty to Trump. And that is what we need to be standing up and fighting against, because again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is as dangerous a time as I can think of for our country, certainly since I've been alive, and really since like the early 1800s in this regard. So with that, I'm happy to, with that note, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, call on our.
All right, there. Yeah.
Hold on. Yes.
Tom, you can just give it to whoever you want.
No.
So I want to ask about the assaults on trans rights. I know Ann Arbor law protects our human rights, and Michigan law also protects our human rights. Like I know the Michigan Attorney General sent a letter to Corewell Health when Corewell Health tried to cut off trans health care based on Trump's executive order. Does your office have any like plans for dealing with the situation where the entire federal government will be trying to pressure our local communities to basically take away my human rights? And do you have a plan for keeping local laws enforcing us, or keeping us safe is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's a great question, and I'll give you a very succinct answer. They can go to hell. We have state level protections that protect against discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. We have state level hate crimes laws that protect people who are subject to violence or threats because of sexual orientation and gender identity. We are going to continue to enforce those state laws. I don't care what the federal government says. And by the way, we have policies in place that go, above and beyond what state law says, and says this shouldn't be a controversial statement, but apparently it is these days, that we should treat people with dignity and respect, which means, for the trans community, referring to people by their proper pronouns and treating them with respect in court. And I'm not backing down from that. And if they want to come for me, they can come for me.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I'm looking at this case against Doge. I don't know if you're familiar with this district with John Bates, district court.
The New
one who
Mexico case, or
the one who demanded that federal officials come under oath and tell him why things haven't been moving along. So did the U.S. Marshals, who actually has the authority to go in and enforce some of this if they don't follow it?
That is a great question, and it is a difficult question because yes, the U.S. Marshals that are responsible for ensuring compliance with court orders in Washington, D.C. report directly to the DOJ. They're part of the Department of Justice, which means they report up to Pam Bondi, who ultimately reports to Donald Trump. So if you want to see a potential early indicator that we may be headed towards one of these constitutional crises that I referenced, I think it could come not in outright defiance of a U.S. Supreme Court decision, but with the marshals being asked, do I do what I would normally do and ensure compliance with a court order, or am I going to do what Donald Trump and Pam Bondi order me to do on the other hand? So that could easily come to a head. I will note, I know actually that this is something that state attorneys general have been thinking about, and there's other law enforcement in the Washington, D.C. area, including in Maryland and Virginia. So query whether one of them may be able to enforce those orders. I don't have an answer to that yet. I think it's not a question that we're used to dealing with, right? I mean, it's just not. But it's a great thing to flag, and that is something to keep an eye on. Online question. Okay. I would like to know how Trump's orders to kick trans folks out of the military is being challenged, and if this order is leading the military back to the days of don't ask, don't tell. Yes, it is being challenged. There is litigation against that. I don't think there's been any preliminary rulings on that yet. God, man, asking like probably, right? I mean, I don't know where the Trump administration is going to go, but it's very clear that they do not respect the LGBTQ community, that they're trying to, we're talking about people that have served our military here. Let's just pause that. Talk about transgender troops. These are people that volunteer to put their lives on the line for our country. And that's who he starts by trying to bully. So yeah, I'm fearful that we're going to see a lot more on that front, but like, man, don't ask me to predict what Trump is going to do, because you saw what happened in the White House yesterday. Like, who the hell could have predicted that? Whoever.
My question is, there are three branches of the government:
Yeah.
executive, legislative, and judicial. The judicial is working, the federal part of it.
Yeah.
How do you get the legislative group to work? All we hear is they're scared. If you're scared, resign. Resign. And then we'll get somebody who will fight. Because here's what the Democrats need to do. The Democrats need to put up a big slogan by billboards and ads that say, "Dear voters, are you listening now? Democrats, are you listening now?" And list all the things that's happening to them, because I don't think you're going to have a problem, because these Republicans are now having these town meetings, that these people are going to get enough information to get those people to resign, and they're going to put somebody in there that's going to take care of them. So we got to be putting the pressure on them. And the other thing with executive orders, is there a limit to the number of executive orders the president can do?
So no, there's no limit to the number of executive orders. What I will say is, a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump, you started by re-emphasizing that we have three branches of government, and I wish somebody would re-inform the Trump administration of that, because right, they're trying to do stuff through executive order that they just absolutely cannot do through executive order. I'll give you one example. Like one of the very first ones he signed on birthright citizenship. You cannot issue an executive order which changes the plain text of the Constitution. So I expect that to be struck down even by the U.S. Supreme Court. We've actually gotten involved in the litigation here in Washtenaw out of our office. And I'll tell you why, by the way, this is so dangerous. Locally, I mean, it devalues people that have been citizens of our country for hundreds and hundreds of years. But also locally, there's a real funding issue, because we have, people that are here on work visas, a lot of people that are here on student visas. If their children are not citizens, they will not qualify under current law for funding for example, special education services or SNAP services, which means that we'd be creating a permanent underclass of children in communities across the country. So there's real impacts on the ground for communities as well. That's why we got involved in that litigation. But I fully expect that to be struck down, because you can't just do everything through executive order. Our Constitution does not provide for Donald Trump to be a dictator or a king.
Back in the Vietnam era, the National Guard was called out in Ohio and went to Kent State University and wound up shooting and many students and killing 4. What can prevent this from happening? The politicization of National Guard, the military, and all levels of law enforcement. And before you answer that, I just want to make one comment to the woman here in the yellow sweater. Your points are right on, but I hate to tell you, this is sad and I'm ashamed to say it, but there's an army of people in America, and their demographic is a lot of white men, but they would be happy to see trans people and black people and Muslims and a boatload of people disposed of in any way whatsoever, because they hate those people. And that's what we're up against. In America, there is a army of people who would become brown shirt people in a heartbeat. If they said, "Here, sign up and here's your brown shirt," they'd be ready to go. They got organizations like the National Rifle Association. So I think we can't forget that. And now the question.
Maybe I should have left so much time for questions, because these are really tough, and I don't have a great answer for that. I just don't. I will say that I think that raising our voices and highlighting what the Trump administration is doing to our communities and how it's hurting not just some segments of our community, but all of us is really important because, you know, again, I'm outside of my core expertise here. I'm not a scholar on, for example, political upheaval, right? I'm a lawyer. I'm the county prosecutor, man. But what you do see in other countries is, you know, when the people are united in one direction, the military doesn't tend to want to go against them, right? And so I think the communication and spreading this message and showing up and going out to other communities and talking about how this stuff affects everybody is really important and is an important bulwark against this horrific situation if we ever wind up in a constitutional crisis. And that's the best answer I can give you.
Thanks for being here, Ellie. I'm a veteran,
Thank you.
and I thank all the veterans here for their service. What I'm worried about, and just to let folks know, when you join the military, you say the oath to the Constitution, but you are then covered by the Uniform Code of Military Justice as long as you're active, in which there is a law that says unlawful orders should not be followed. But with the JAGs out of the way,
yeah,
and the military leaders out of the way, I am concerned because I believe they're planning for this. They are looking for an excuse to mobilize the National Guard or the military. And as veteran, my oath still stands. I want to know, and I want other people thinking about this and talking to their representatives. Where do you expect the veterans to go that are not active duty? Because we will show up and we will go places. I'd rather be directed than be rogue.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. So I had a couple points / concerns to bring up. I think one thing that's missing in this conversation has just been the experience of those. You are the county DA, you know, you represent the judiciary, and that's been the experience of poor people and especially poor Black people at the hands of the judiciary. So I invite a lot of the folks in here who are very concerned to, in the words of the Trisha Duckworth, was our pain not enough? You know, we have been talking about this for generations and decades. This is not, I'm not trying to kick anybody while they're down. This is an opportunity to invite those who are concerned to center those with lived experience with these kinds of things moving forward. That's one. For another thing, since we have you here, her name escapes me, but Trump appointed a new pardon czar. And so and it's a Black woman, a real Black woman. And so I said, yeah. And so I bring that up to bring up the point that, you know, the Republicans are kind of moving in on what is traditionally like a progressive concept, right? You know, giving people back there for very different reasons though, right? He's trying to take care of the people that take care of him. Whereas I don't see very strong Democrat messaging on this point at all. So something on that point, I just want to know what your thoughts are on that, and how to get the party to center those with these kind of experiences to be able to move forward so that we can all be a little bit less afraid here moving forward.
Yeah. And I think there are really important points on the pardon czar front, right? Look, Donald Trump likes the pardon power because he wanted to pardon January 6ers and everything like that, right? Okay. But I do think that we need to be true to our values, and we need to continue to recognize that pardons play a really important role in our system. And the mere fact that Trump has abused that power should not lead us to abandon our principles in that regard. Pardons are fundamentally an act of executive grace that recognize that when somebody has been convicted of a crime, none of us can see into the future, not prosecutors, not judges, not anybody. And people can and do change. And sometimes people have earned legitimately through their good works, through the fact that they're giving back to the community, have earned that chance to have their record cleared, to have their sentence commuted. It's something that historically we stood for as Democrats, and the fact that Donald Trump is using the pardon power to pardon January 6ers and those who engage in an insurrection absolutely should not devalue the real transformative power of the pardon that we've stood for so long. So thank you for. Yep. What?
They reconsidering their sort of distance or kind of trepidation with pardon. Trump and Biden.
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know because I can't grant pardons. It's an executive function, but yeah. So I can't answer the question, but you heard what I think about it. So yeah. All right. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ellie.